and welcome to this second in our series of brown bag lunches that are talking about sustainable finance, and where we ask the question, how can sustainable finance energize sustainability strategies? So I'm here today with Cecilia Nord, Director of Responsible Sourcing at Electrolux. And I wonder if you can just say a couple of words of introduction to yourself, Cecilia.
My pleasure, Rebecca. Hello, everyone. I'm Cecilia. I'm with Electrolux since very many years, 26 years actually, but have been throughout this time been fortunate to actually work connected to or on environmental or sustainability issues all along. We were a company who started very early to sort of go after and use the opportunities that environmental management and environmental proactivity meant. And we've been able to use that position of strength ever since. And I've had various positions within the company connected to sustainability and environment. And since 2012, part of the group sustainability staff, and since this year, actually also heading up sustainability strategy. So helping our head of sustainability shape the Electrolux sustainability strategies.
Excellent, thank you so much. My name is Rebecca Oliver, and I'm a sustainability strategist with Purple Ivy. And I'm focusing very much at the moment on what's happening in the world of sustainable finance and what that means for companies who are really the end game for a lot of the thinking and changes and new tools and products that are happening in sustainable finance. So Cecilia and I will have a conversation. I have a couple of questions for her, but we would love to hear from all of you who are listening. So please put your questions in the chat, and we will talk about what you would like to talk about as well. And on that topic, I'd just like to say that this week, we'd also be delighted if you'd put into the chat any ideas or questions, topics, themes that you'd like Purple Ivy to look at in our future brown bag lunches. So last week, we talked about the changing relationship between companies and their capital providers as sustainable finance receives ever more focus. And this week, we'll be looking a little bit more closely at what it means for companies who have already been looking at sustainability for a long time, like Electrolux. And so my first question to you, Cecilia, is, are you feeling energized or stressed by developments in the finance sector? And I'm beginning to see the finance sector, the sustainable finance sector, a little bit like a swarm of bees that you can hear buzzing and getting closer and closer. And they're looking for nectar, they're looking for things to invest in, and they're demanding data. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I love your analogy, actually, because two things. We'd like to be seen as a flower. That's a nice thing. We'd also like, I like the analogy about bees, because we know what this is about. It's about saving the planet in the end. No, I understand what you're asking, and I think that it provides both. It's really an energizing feeling, but it's also a stressful feeling. Because we've been lucky, as I said in the beginning, we have been following this path for a very long time. So we've done the base math, right? So we know the foundation, we know our own company, we know our impacts, and we've chosen what path to take in order to continue reducing our own impact and take proactive steps. So we have a lot of data. So from that perspective, I think that we are quite well prepared to have these conversations. On the other, and we've also, from the group sustainability team, we've had many conversations with sustainability financial people in the past, but we're now also seeing the transition from the sort of those people to the general financial investment world, and that's really exhilarating. That's really what needs to happen if we want to make a change. So we're both thrilled, but a little bit in awe.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about sort of changing conversations with the financial sector and within the company. And you come from a team that have been developing your knowledge and working a lot with your with these topics, which are really quite, you know, for a lot of business people, they're a little bit outside of their what they've perhaps traditionally been studying. Are you finding that there's a need for a lot of knowledge transfer from your team to other parts of the company, or to the newcomers from finance? I mean, are these new kinds of conversations you're having?
Yeah, in many ways it is. I think we're also fortunate in Electrolux that there's a lot of interest in this topic. We have a management who's been talking about this and driving this proactively for some time. So, and of course, you know, the top management sets the direction, and then it's very easy to create interest among key people in also other functions. So we're happily seeing open doors everywhere right now. But of course, it's a new topic for many, and I think that the challenge is when everything is now moving so fast, not to trip up on sort of wanting to get to those KPIs that we have to follow, and find the easy way to actually demonstrate how good we are, but actually to have time to go into the details and understand the fundamentals of why we've made the priorities we have, why we've set the targets we have, how we've actually defined the mechanics of the targets, because we are very strong believers in science, right? So we've done, not me personally, but my colleagues in the sustainability team over the years have done the base work together with experts outside the company, the IPCC framework, Stockholm Resilience Center, all the different various topic experts have been part of sort of forming our approach. And that, taking that into other functions within the company, is a bit of a crash course for everyone, right? From purchasing to treasury to operations to general management, and that we need to sit steady in the boat and really look at the horizon and carry those conversations for us to make sure that everyone's on board, have the same perspective and see the same end goal as we do.
And that makes me think about another thing we talked about last week. We were discussing this almost tension between this focus on data from the financial sector, and then the need to be sure that the data sits in a long-term strategy that the EU taxonomy are calling a transition plan with science-based targets. Are you also hearing this term, the transition plan, so that the data is not just sort of isolated from its context, but it's part of charting a journey that is a strategic one?
I would say we're having that conversation internally. So from our perspective, I think we are the ones actually talking about that to the external world, because we've been on that journey for some time. We set science-based targets quite a long time ago, and they are still the foundation of where we need to go, and will serve us well when we now talk about having to report versus the taxonomy and fulfilling the obligations set in the Green New Deal by the European Union. So I would say that we feel comfortable, and we have a charted way that we're already on.
So you have. So I'm having the sense of a sort of charted path ahead, and then you've got this swarm of bees. So I'm thinking, what are you feeling that there are some things that you're going to be able to do now that you couldn't do before, because the finance sector is looking for targets for green investment, sustainability linked investments? There are these new tools that they're producing, like the bonds. how are you, and maybe particularly about sourcing, your area in particular? Are there things that you feel that you can do now that you might not have been able to do when the bees were focusing on something else?
No, I definitely think so. We've always been in the forefront of sort of establishing where we need to go from a sort of a scientific environmental perspective. But then, of course, there are limitations to how fast you can move, because it still has to make the sense. The business model has to work, and we have the consumers we have, and we have the markets we have, and it takes time for everything to mature. And there is also a kind of time needed actually to even develop the solutions that we know are needed to take these steps. Like, we've been working on recycled materials for a very long time. Actually, it was one of the issues I started working on in 12 years ago. It's almost horrible to say 12 years, but there you go. Now that actually is definitely will be part of the taxonomy, and will be part of the questions that our investors will be asking us over time. But the problem there has always been the supply market, to find this material that actually is good enough, and the supply is stable enough for us to be able to say, okay, we're going to be investing, our new platform is going to be dedicated to this, and we're going to be offering it to the market. Now, by this new interest, I think that we will be perhaps more brave within the company as well to carry these kind of conversations and really understand that this has a sense of urgency. We knew before we needed to do it, but now we're getting other incentives to actually take these steps. So definitely, I think it's going to mean an acceleration of our own conversations, our own sense of safety in making these changes, and investing this money, and investing in new things that we sort of that are immature, and where we have to lead the way.
And is there an opportunity to work more closely with suppliers, either find new suppliers of more sustainable materials, or to help existing suppliers transfer? Is there a chance for new kinds of relationships between this sort of trio of Electrolux supplier and investor?
Yeah, and I think that's already happening as well. We see many initiatives being taken right now or informed. You've seen some of it in the media over the past year, teaming up with recycling organizations, for instance, or companies, in order to drive in a more circular direction. Definitely, we see a need to sort of infuse between our different industries with our suppliers and ourselves when it comes to new materials, new types of packaging. All of this we can't do on our own. We have to actually team up with our suppliers, and that's being reflected more and more in how we set up our sourcing decisions as well. We want to invest in our suppliers that actually want to be on this journey with us, and since a number of years we're highlighting that to our suppliers, and actually rewarding our suppliers for taking steps in the direction which we have outlined and which we think is the right one. And our customers are actually asking us to do the same thing. They want to partner closer with us on this journey, and we're lucky we have very ambitious customers who are sort of also pushing us, right? And that's what's needed, because they need to help market the best kind of products to our consumers, because it's not until we actually have an end consumer out there who chooses an Electrolux product that we actually are able to make the difference.
Yeah. And I'd just like to say it would be great to hear some comments from our listeners, that maybe some specific questions to Cecilia about sourcing or about Electrolux. So please do send in any comments or any questions. So one of the things that I'm also getting the sense is that in Europe, there's a sense in the financial system that there's a gratitude to the Commission for putting together this extremely detailed taxonomy, while the it's quite a complex document, and for different sectors and companies, it feels perhaps one is less aware of what a huge advantage it is for the financial sector. But my sense is that it's not just the European financial sector that is going to follow this, but this is going to be a global change. And Electrolux is a global company. You're not just looking at the European markets. Are you feeling any tension between the focus on sustainability in Europe with the taxonomy and how other regions are moving?
Tension is perhaps a little bit negative word, but definitely challenges or sort of we have work to do. One of our clear targets is to be leaders in our different markets when it comes to energy and water efficiency in our products. But we're very sort of spoiled in Europe in the sense that there is a mature labeling system in place for consumers to be able to choose their kind of product or how efficient their product should be. And that actually is a sort of a prerequisite also for the taxonomy to be able to point the way to what actually is then a product contributing to the future and what isn't. But in the rest of the world, we don't really have those kind of labeling systems, right, everywhere. So we're, even if we were sort of to disregard taxonomy and all the rest of it, we are definitely focusing on trying to bring across this need for informing consumers about product efficiency and product performance in every market we're at, because we feel it's our obligation to actually at least give the consumer the opportunity of choosing an efficient product or as efficient product as possible, and also in order to sort of to make it possible for us also to invest in those markets, to invest our most efficient technology in these markets. We need a way to be able to talk about this to the consumer, because if there is no way for the consumers to compare, how are they going to know that our solution presumably is better than the products sitting at the aside on the shelf? So it's a very big conversation for us and have been for a long time, all aside of the taxonomy. And now with the taxonomy also, we're really discussing and scratching our heads and have asked back to the European Union, how are we going to, as a global company, show where we are at in the other markets, because there is no sort of global labeling system.
Yeah, no, I know that's a challenge in many sectors, and I remember working in Unilever, having a similar experience, that there was a sense that it was an advantage in some sectors because the customers were pulling, and in others it was not helping us compete with competitors. Now we have a question from the listeners, the watchers, audience. Shrikant Ramakrishnan has asked, what prominent changes did you see once Electrolux had consciously chosen the sustainable financing platform? Are your chosen suppliers and partners now consciously planet-friendly players? And I'm thinking that question is an opportunity, Cecilia, for you to maybe just mention that Electrolux was one of the early users of the new product, the green, well, it's not new anymore, the green bond. So I know that you have chosen sustainable financing. So maybe you can tell a little bit about that and what that enabled Electrolux to do.
Yep. No, sure. Many questions in one. Let's start with the Green Bond Initiative then. We launched it a couple of years ago in order to actually pinpoint investments and sort of target investments to our sustainability agenda and our climate agenda more clearly. So they go into R&D money for lowering our product footprint. They go into R&D to develop the whole concept of recycled materials. They go into phasing out high impact greenhouse gases, and they go into actually further efficiency work in our factory footprint. And of course, that means they go into our overall climate targets. So it's meant that we are able to actually get a new capital and direct it towards gaining more knowledge and gaining more ground in these areas. And we were one. I think that is really a good piece of advice for everyone that's listening here that represents a company. That's really has been a good learning for us in order to sort of quantify and earmark investments into these different categories, and that's going to help us going forward in reporting against these new taxonomy requirements. When we speak about suppliers, it goes into that, of course, because we're working very closely with our key suppliers in order to realize these improvements and new technologies that we have to use in order to reach these targets. But we're also taking steps in the general supply base as part of our overall climate goals, which is going climate neutral in our operations until 2030 and going climate neutral throughout our supply chain by 2050. So of course, this is now starting to play a big role in our conversations with our suppliers, and their willingness to contribute to this journey plays a role in the sourcing decisions that we make. And since last year was the first year, we actually invited our direct material suppliers. Our friends in purchasing have really gotten going on this, and now over three quarters of the direct material spend is actually reporting to CDP since 1 year ago. So it's a major step for us. And now we're making the same journey with our OEM suppliers as well. So for sure, we are seeing that our conversations with our suppliers are being heard. They are sort of embracing it and taking steps to be part of the journey, not because just we're saying it, but we are one of the many, I think, saying it. And CDP is a good tool there because, of course, it helps them also show their improvements to other customers as well and to the financial market.
Yeah. So reporting helps to get a handle on where you are now and where you want to go and where you can go.
Exactly.
Just to move the conversation, we have another question coming in about sourcing. Looking at it from the social aspect, is that something that you have in your sourcing strategy, a social sourcing favoring suppliers with a stronger focus on social impact indicators, poverty alleviation and inclusion? And I'm thanking Sergio Lopez for that question.
Yeah, we have since many years a strong focus on supply chain, social aspects in supply chain. It was already part of when we made the transition, as many companies have done, from sort of being European and North America centric to actually increasing rapidly and to a high degree sourcing and manufacturing in low cost markets. So already at that point we were quite aware that we needed to make sure that we were doing the right thing as we were switching to a supply base in the markets with a bigger challenge when it comes to protecting both the planet and their own people. So we have a strong responsible sourcing program in place, and there we actually monitor our suppliers, and we, again, as part of the sourcing decisions, we look at how our suppliers are performing versus our policies, which includes both social aspects, human rights aspect, environmental aspects.
Has the pandemic, a lot of people are saying that there's a lot more focus on the S in ESG. So the sustainable financing focus on social topics and trying to get economies back on their feet after the pandemic all across the world. Is that something that you have heard a change or been involved in conversations about since the pandemic sort of pulled the rug out from under our feet?
I wouldn't say, actually, we've had disturbances due to the pandemic. We haven't seen in our industry a kind of this, what you explain or what you describe as pulling the rug under people's feet. It's been more about temporary disturbances, and then the companies have swung back, so to speak. And we were actually very fortunate that we were able to fight it through together with our suppliers. What we're seeing, however, is in the markets where we operate, in some cases, like in Southeast Asia, who are relying very heavily on migrant labor, for instance, there it's a really tricky situation for these people who are moving across borders in order to find jobs. And then the situation is very volatile, and people are being, borders are closed, people are being kicked out, people are forced to go back. So there we're taking a more active role in actually trying to provide tools, not for people necessarily in our supply chain, but generally migrant laborers in Thailand, for instance, and try to give them tools so that they can make more informed decisions and try to sort of come out of this situation in the best way possible. So if that answers your question, I mean, as a company, we've more seen the direct effects of the whole difficulty in supply chains and supply and demand. But in the general context of where we operate, we've seen some of it, and we've tried to assist more indirectly.
So I think I'll leave that question, but I'm sort of interested in how the decisions you take during this period have been translated into sort of ESG reporting. But I'll leave that, because I know that ESG reporting isn't part of your remit. You're much more hands-on in getting things done. So just as to round off, we have a few minutes left, and questions have come in about, so where is Electrolux going? What are the next steps for Electrolux, given this new energy coming from the finance sector? And maybe as you talk about that, thinking about the journey that Electrolux has taken, some smaller companies maybe haven't got going yet. And I know that you talked about you've got some advantages now from where you have been in the sustainability journey. So if you can say, where are you going, and where have you come from in terms of tips for companies that need to get moving in this whole area? Maybe that was a two question, but yeah.
I'd like to start by saying that what I said earlier, that to get your facts right, so to establish what are the material issues for you as a company, is your business idea, your whole business model, is it sound, is it future proofed, and you might want to take a long hard look at that to see, okay, what in 10-15 years time is the world going to be looking like, and how does my company, my product, my service fit in it, and start making small changes or preparing for a world that might look very different. I think all of us have to do that, also Electrolux. But what we see ahead of us is clearly, we've taken really a strong step through our senior management the last 2 years, saying that we want to make our sustainability strategy a sustainable business strategy. So we're really incorporating sustainability into the very offer that we make to our consumers. So we're saying we want to help our consumers lead better lives. That's really the business idea of Electrolux. And so we want to solve all the friction and the sustainability struggle that our consumers have connected to food, the preparation of food, the storing of food, connected to textiles, caring for laundry, caring for clothes, even their whole relationship with clothes, and with their home environment, how to take care of their home environment. So we have a large universe of sustainability issues connected to all of those activities that we want to help our consumers to solve, while helping them, lead more comfortable lives. So that is a big challenge, and that means that we're sort of rethinking our product strategies. We're rethinking how we want to invest, what we want to prioritize, and that's permeating the whole company right now. So it's an amazing journey. But I would say also, for sort of tying back to the sustainable finance, we're setting, since 1 year ago, we're setting LTIs, long-term incentives for our senior management on these kind of KPIs, science-based targets. So now all of a sudden, all the senior managers are talking about science-based targets, improvements in product footprint, and there you go. The conversation is very different.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was a lovely insight into how Electrolux has been working on this journey, and how the flower that is Electrolux is producing all the nectar, all the nectar, so that the bees will come and collect it. And I think that's really what all companies need to be thinking about now. Really, is how do you attract the sustainable finance, because that's how we're going to transition. So thank you very much to you, Cecilia, and thank you to everybody who was listening. And we'll be back soon with more brown bag topics to inspire everybody as Purple Ivy, with our focus on future proofing companies and transitioning. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, we'll be back soon. Keep an eye on our LinkedIn page. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.